All right.
We're live.
This is where we have cool intro music and fucking fireworks and some neat shit, right?
Next time.
Next
or
time.
Two
next
two
time.
next times.
Well, hey, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. It's our first inaugural live stream of the Michigan Brews, whatever the hell we are. So there's myself, Jordan, and Brian. We decided to do this to engage the Michigan brewing community, home brewers, professional brewers. We're looking to educate, promote, share information related to brewing, and enjoy some craft beer. We're all avid home brewers. We love the hobby, and this great community in Michigan. It's been an amazing journey to meet all of these people across the state that are home brewers and get together and share information. So really, we just love talking about home brewing and beer. And due to the recent events, we can't get together in our club meetings, so we're doing a lot more stuff virtual. And we're looking to just expand our discussions, include other people in and about the Michigan brewing community. Share some insights, get some stories, and just talk to people. Brewers, pro brewers, home brewers, festival organizers. Take a peek behind the curtain of what makes this an amazing community. So that said, I'm Jason. I've been homebrewing for about 7 years. I brew everything. I got into brewing because I really wanted an IPA that was hit more of my palate. And Trevor, our guest tonight, he kind of helped me and guided me along on that initial journey and got me into this thing. And since then, it's been going gangbusters. So, Brian.
I'm Brian Stevens. I've been brewing for about 5 years now, maybe 6. It's 1 year less than Jordan because Jordan is the guy that got me into brewing so long ago. I basically got jealous that him and a couple other buddies started brewing their first beer with it was at the Bell's. It was the Bell's homebrew competition, right?
Yeah, it was the second annual Bell's homebrew. So that's kind of how I kind of keep track how long we've been brewing.
Okay, yeah. So 1 year less than you, and I got hooked. It became I guess more of an obsession than a hobby, maybe. And so here I am with a basement full of brewing gear doing whatever this is with 2 guys I love. So yeah. How about you, Jordan?
Yeah. And Jordan Brady, I've been brewing. I guess not to. I don't know how long. So 1 year longer than Brian. Got into it. One of our other mutual friends approached me and said, "Hey, let's do this." And said, "Sure, why not?" Went out to the Bell's homebrew fest kickoff. And got a free batch of wort and had absolutely no idea what the hell I was doing. But here we are, however many years later. Got Brian into it. Met Jason through our local homebrew club, and it's turned into quite a passion of mine.
Nice. So one of the things we're going to try to do, we're trying to come up with, how the flow and the format this show is going to work, and we thought it important since this was brewing and beer related, that we would talk about the beers that we're drinking on stream tonight. The first beer I've got tapped is just some homebrew. It's a orange creamsicle IPA that I brewed a couple of weeks ago. And then later on in the show, we're going to get into a beer that our guest has picked for us to try, and we're all going to share that on air. So this is a great. If anybody hasn't tried brewing with brewing a milkshake IPA, it's blowing my mind just how juicy and fruity and wonderful this style can be. So Brian looks like he's grabbing something, but
I am grabbing something. No, I'm waiting for our guest to come on so I can try my first beer. I'm just getting it prepped here.
All right.
Currently, my glass is empty. My beautiful Libby tulip glass.
Well,
my favorite glasses.
Very nice.
When we get him in here, we'll jump into that one. All right. Well, that said, then, the focus of this episode is to get to know one of our local heroes in the brewing community, Trevor Klimek. We're going to chat with him and learn about how he got into brewing and his experience transitioning from a home brewer into a pro brewer. Trevor, he started homebrewing about 16 years ago. He went on to work at the Bell's General Store He provided inspiration, advice, and encouragement to countless homebrewers before heading over to Pawpaw Brewing as a professional brewer in 2010. And then he would go on from there to team up with Chris O'Neill, who he had encouraged to take up the hobby a few years before and move into One Well Brewing as the head brewer and production manager. So that said, Trevor, thanks for joining us tonight. This is I'm so pumped to have you on here. Let me bring you into the main channel. So Trevor, you got me into brewing years ago. You are the reason. So you're like my local hero. So I'm so glad to have you on tonight.
I'm so happy to be here, and so happy to be a part of the Michigan craft beer industry for the last 16 years. Later on we'll talk about my story, but beer randomly chose me in life. So I'm happy to be surrounded by so many lovely people that I've got to know, and hard workers, people that really appreciate, patience that we all learn. We're all learning some patience right now in life, and I think being a brewer, can really help us learn the patience that we need to deal with everything we got going on in life.
Right on. So everybody, I think they're all kind of waiting to jump into to your beer selection for tonight. So we've got a can here. This is Moral Dilemma.
Yes, sir.
And you got to have some crazy cool 3D glasses to see it.
Oh man, I got to put mine on. I don't. Yeah.
Just don't look at your computer screen doing that. That gives me a headache.
Trevor, you selected this beer for us to drink tonight, man. Tell us a little bit about it.
I sure did, man. This is a Mosaic-focused hop double IPA. Fantastic, and really pops with the citrus notes. Mosaic is one of my favorite hops. Toward the end of my home brewing and right before my professional career, the Mosaic hop came out, and it inspired me to just do some new things. And I'm really happy to have this along with the second beer that I have, which is our One Well's Moral Support. I'll be drinking that a little bit later, but kind of got a brother team of a session IPA and a double IPA. So if everyone is ready, if you've got beers in your hands, go ahead and give me a good cheers. Happy to be with all of you, and let's talk some beer.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for joining us. Everybody, kick off. I'm dragging on until Jordan's ready. Come on, Jordan. Kick off.
I'm getting there. Want to get the
brews,
nice head on there? All right.
There you go. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers,
and you guys at home, man. All right, Trevor, man, that is tasty.
That is delicious.
It's delicious.
Super clean.
Super happy with it. Freshly canned, available at the pub, and just awesome.
Mosaic is one of those hops for me. Like I can pick out and you brewed with Sabro now too, right? You've brewed the what's that that milkshake IPA you did? Unclear Future. Yeah. Mosaic and Sabro I can pick out.
Milkshake IPA. You should check for it here in about a month.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, my girlfriend loves that beer.
In the tank right now. It's in the tank.
Badass.
FV5 on that note. Fermented Vat 5. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, you guys care about it. That's cool stuff.
I do.
Fermented Vat 5.
So we'll get into it, man. So before you started homebrewing, because I know this, and some of these guys didn't know this. Before you started homebrewing, what was your career path? Because it was not a brewer, right?
Not at all, man. Not at all. I'm originally from Big Rapids, Michigan, where my folks still live. And I was big into the arts. I was big into sports and big into the arts in high school. And so after high school, I moved to Los Angeles, California, and joined a performance organization. So I lived in LA for 2 years and San Diego for 2 years, a part of the Young Americans. And the main mission with the Young Americans is to inspire younger kids, performing workshops every few days in schools, and staying the night, being, staying with homestays, getting to know people really well. And just inspiring people about song and dance. So I had the opportunity to travel around the world, Germany, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Luxembourg, about half the United States, and get to know people. And that's what I really love. And I went to school at Western for vocal music education and dance education. That's kind of what brought me here to Southwest Michigan, to Kalamazoo. I was going to be a choir teacher and dance instructor, and love it so much. Randomly, started drinking some beers in college with one of my best buddies, Colt.
Who would have thunk?
Yeah, who does that? Yeah.
I had no money. He was always like, "Hey man, let's go to the store right up the road here, and we'll go to Tiffany's and we'll get some special German brews." And I don't have any money. He said, "Trev, just drink them on me. You got to taste this. This is awesome." So I got to experience a lot of quality craft beer, with Colt, as well as overseas in the Young Americans. Randomly, after about 2 or 3 semesters, he looked at me and said, "Hey, Trev, man, I'm out of money. My uncle homebrews. Maybe we should think about starting a homebrew. Maybe we can make our own beer and still party like we had been, freshman and sophomore year or whatever." So we started homebrewing together, and it just took off. And I had a whole basement full of 20, 30 carboys, and it was a cool story. I'm originally from Big Rapids, like I said, and Colt was from Holland, Michigan. And so he went to Siciliano's up in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
Lovely store, awesome homebrew shop. And so I said, for sure, man, I'm going to go up to, lived in Kalamazoo for about a year. Wasn't big into craft beer. Didn't really know about it. Wasn't really a beer drinker so much at that time. And I said, "Hey, man, I'm going to go up and get a homebrew kit from Siciliano's in Grand Rapids." So I go up, get my kit, meet them. Yeah, I keep going up every, few weeks. I'm going up to Siciliano's, and the owner's son helps me out. Say, "What's your name?" "Trevor." "Okay, cool. You want to make a beer that's kind of like Oberon?" You were going to call it Trevoron. That was my third beer that he helped me. I think it was Chris Siciliano, if I can remember correctly. But, used to give me, I was up there so much, they'd give me free stuff, like a huge tub of dark DME, dry malt extract, got through the humidity, got into a big brick. And so they just gave it to me. You know what I'm saying? If you get this out of here, you can have it. And so I spent, after about a month or two, he said, "Trevor, man, I really appreciate your business. You're a cool dude. You always bring in good vibes and all that. But why do you drive up here to Grand Rapids to get your homebrew supplies?" And I said, "Where should I go?" And he said, "Well, go to Bell's. It's about a mile away from where you live." And I said, "Bell's? What's that?" He said, "Oberon?" And I said, "Yeah, I know that beer. Yeah, that's a good beer." He said, "That's made in Kalamazoo, man. It's made like a mile from your house. They have a homebrew shop. You should, it probably won't see you much anymore, but you can buy stuff from Bell." So, man, of course, the next week I was I lived a mile away from a homebrew shop. I was there 2-3 times a day, 4-7 days a week. I was there so often that the general manager at that time, Jason Reichers, said, "Trevor, you're here more than some of my employees. You're teaching my employees how to homebrew." And at that point in time, I was working at TGI Fridays, doing "Hey, you want some dinner?" Just doing great things for people. But at that point in time, I grew up with no alcohol really in my house. My dad wasn't into drinking or partying. And so it was kind of like taboo for me. I was like, a homebrew shop? Totally want the job. Oh, shit. What am I going to tell my parents?
Nice.
I'm telling my parents I'm working in a strip club. Totally weird. So after we got through that hump, and my parents started to understand, that this was something deep and cultural for me. I was I started to read a lot more than I ever had before. It changed my life, and I have a huge plethora library. I strongly suggest that to anybody if you have any time in life to read. And at that point in time, I did. Now I have a 2-year-old, so I'm reading less. But it was a great story from having my whole life kind of my whole beginning part of my adult life being in song and dance, and having it swiftly just kind of be brought into beer. Wanted to help other people find themselves partially, just like the song and dance. It's a tool. It's the vehicle to help people understand themselves more. And I know that we'll talk later maybe about the negative things about alcohol, but beer can really be a camaraderie, a really positive thing if you treat it and handle it in the right way.
You talk about being in the troop in California and your goal there to educate and to inspire people and stuff like that, and then you come into the brewing community, and that's aside from my case, I hear that all the time. Trevor inspired me to do this. You inspired Chris O'Neill. You took me to the store and walked around that first beer that I ever brewed. And I'm like, Trevor, I want an IPA. And you're like, let's do this. And what flavor aspects do you want? And what color do you want it to be? And what do you want to be prominent? And we walked around the store and you just threw shit in my hands. And I went home and brewed it, and I love it. I still brew that beer today.
That's fantastic.
But it was all just because you just walked to the store and kind of shoved shit at me. And
didn't that really influence the way that you brew beer for years, even now, right? Still, it
totally does. That in the books. I think you also recommended Extreme Brewing and some other books to me, if I remember right. And yeah, Trevor's passion and the way that you go into recipe creation and expression, that is what drives me today, and what I tell everybody else, to taste the grains, to smell the hops, to really get into the beer and figure out how you wanted to build it to get to that picture. And until you start playing around with all that stuff and learning what the different colors of malts do and the different varieties of hops can impart in the beer and the different yeast strains, I said you're not really into the art of it, right? Into the heart. So no, you did that for me, and it's funny that that's what you started to do for art, and you turned that into beer, which is also art.
Yeah, I'm blessed to have parents that really wanted their 3 children, me being the youngest, just to be themselves and to allow money and stuff to kind of figure it out. So I always was kind of going to go into whatever I was passionate about. And so even though being a choir teacher wouldn't bring home a ton of bacon, I had the opportunity to do the right thing. And so I'm really blessed that I've respectfully never been in a situation work-wise where I'm actually doing something that I really don't like to do. And that's kind of something I would just say to the younger folks that are just getting into brewing. That's something you want to think about if you're ever interested in going pro, and understanding where you want to go and being happy and humble with what you have.
Right on. So I don't want to jump ahead too far because there's more to get to here. So you started, just brewing for cheap beer. I get that. A lot of people do. And
50 cents a beer, man.
Right. 50 cents a beer. That first beer though is never 50 cents a beer.
I think I made so much homebrew that I was down to like 12 cents a beer.
That first batch, I remember telling my wife, I'm like, yeah, this one, $10 a bottle.
Yeah,
but it's going to get down. I got to get quantity, right? You got to get quantity to start bringing that overhead down. But so when you transitioned from being just this homebrew kid, hanging out in homebrew stores to actually working in Bell's, like what did that do to your homebrewing? Like, did you still stay up with it? Did it improve it, change it?
It blew it up. Like I said, I guess number one, I started to read a lot more, which is great. I'm a hands-on person at work, and so I really like to physically bust my butt. And so I feel like I got a little bit of leniency when I was able to go in and bust my butt for 4 or 5 hours, and then actually sit back and read a homebrew magazine that were coming in every month. They have 3 or 4 different varieties. Brew your own Zymergy, blah 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 blah, and the manager allowed that because he knew that my passion was I was only going to be able to pass that knowledge on to more people. And I'm blessed to have that opportunity. So then, so reading was a huge thing. And then just having the plethora of like ingredients that kind of have to be thrown away or whatever. Like,
sure.
I took a bunch of old stale hops from Bell's when, just because I could. And so I had a whole bunch of options to do stuff. It didn't matter at that point. I was making dark beers and English beers with them, but it was a thing where I got to learn a lot in a very short amount of time. Anytime a bag would split open, it's like, that would kind of be like, hey man, we're supposed to throw that out. Trevor, throw it out in your car. Okay. You know what I mean? So
good perk.
There were huge perks right there. And then I think that there was some knowledge coming down from the people that were working at Bell's at the brewery, doing samples, doing lab tests and stuff like that, where I didn't maybe appreciate it so much at the time because I was just this young kid that was making like phenol bomb Hefeweizens. But I thought that was cool, and I liked banana, and so I wanted that flavor, and so I was fermenting it warm specifically, and people would come in and say, "Hey, man, we sampled this out and you think, you might want to tame down your fermentation temperature because that was huge." You know what I'm saying? So then I actually learned, like, okay, that threshold is a lot more than what is in what people,
right.
You know what I'm trying to say? Phenols and esters and all that stuff. I was just trying to put it in a room at 68 degrees and not thinking originally as a home brewer that, well, the fermentation temperature is going to go up 4 to 6 degrees, depending on, lots of different things. So learning quickly, getting a job at a homebrew shop.
Right on.
Yeah. I'm refilling.
Yeah.
Everyone. I don't know. You want to do it? Yeah.
So,
I don't know.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right.
Yeah, top off.
When I first got to the Bell's General Store, they had about 6 varieties of hops and about 6 varieties of yeast. And I was super integral in trying to grow the Bell's General Store from the old small location in the back to where the general store is now, and what everyone knows of what the general store is. Trying to get all grain supplies in there, getting all the kegging equipment, all the draft equipment, whole bunch of stuff. And so I was really happy to be able to sell a lot of stuff there and then be able to get more stuff. And I had a tremendous amount of leniency from the manager, Jason Reichers, to say, Trevor, whatever you want to buy and you think it's going to sell, if you can sell it, just order it and do it. Right. And so I banged it out with a ton of, it went from 6 varieties of Nottingham yeast and shit like that to like all the liquid white lab stuff. And I would go through it and make sure that it was fresh for people, fresh enough, and, there was a little bit of extra work to it, but I was super into it and, still am, but it was just a passion. When you're into something, just go for it. Just keep doing it.
When you first started, did you start off brewing extract? Is that like what was available at the time? You mentioned grains and stuff like that.
I sure did. The Bell's General Store didn't have almost any all grain supplies. They had, they didn't have like a base malt 10 bag. They didn't have a 11 pound bag of base malt.
Sure.
They might have had like a 50-pound bag, like 2 50-pound bags of base malt. That was always for the farmers that were coming in and they just needed something to make their corn shine. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
They were a home brewer that was like really into it, but they had, we when I was at Bell's had, specialty grains, 1 pound bags, but it wasn't any all grain. We didn't start with all grain until we moved to the front location where the general store is now.
Right on.
So when you started,
on that note, sorry about that.
Oh no, you're fine.
I positively started as an extract brewer with the Brewer's Best boxed kits. I had the deluxe equipment kit and a few of the whatever. I actually don't remember what the first 2 beers were, but a red dog amber I called and something else. But bringing it back. But so yeah, did extract for a while. Sam Reese, who is the head brewer production manager up at Upper Hand Brewing. We got a job at Bell's the same day, and he'd inspired me a lot. He was already all grain brewing. He was definitely a step ahead of me for sure in the brewing world. I was still partying at night with my buddies, like starting brewing at 6 o'clock, drinking bunches of beers, grilling, and making food at the same time, boiling over, missing hot drops, scorching the bottom, getting fucking wasted at the end, forgetting to pitch yeast till the morning. And so he was integral in helping me say, he was just like, Trevor, oh really? I wake up at 9 and get it going, man. And so that was something I think that just is something I wanted to say earlier. I was like, hey, I should say this, that like, even if it's a little bit during the day and then you start drinking beers with your buddies at halfway through, a lot better than in the morning.
Right.
I've read a lot of people say, wait until you get the boil going at least. And then,
I mean, I just do it in the morning. Like when I got super what I feel super good, or when I was super, super happy with my homebrew, it's when I transitioned to like waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning and like, you know, getting the water going and then going in and having breakfast. And by the time I come out, the water's hot. Like I had my whole day, set the mash, go cut the lawn, come back. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
It was a great situation. And I really feel like my, I could do cellar work later at night, transferring beers, bottling, something like that. When I'm drinking and partying, had some buddies over to bottle later at night. That's great. But when I was really trying to nail something, I'm happy that I decided, thank you, Sam Reese, to kind of start brewing a little bit earlier and focus out, have that be the thing I was doing for the day.
You know, that's a great point, because like as a home brewer, there's been many times where, you know, whether it be during the week or just a quiet weekend, where I nail a brew, you know, and it goes so efficiently. And it's like, I finished on time, I hit all my numbers, I got all the additions, everything was great. I have Brian come over to brew. Dude, I miss fucking hops. I fucking overboil. You know, we mash in for, you know, too damn long or whatever. And or the equipment fucks up. Like everything goes wrong when I'm sitting there drinking with my buddies and brewing. Even though as a home brewer, that's one of the best things about it, right? Was getting together.
And I'm not saying that we can't do all, you know what I'm saying? But just having that mindset. Maybe it's a hey man, you want to come over from 10 to 2 instead of 6 to 2?
Right. Yep.
So that said, sticking on the home brewer before we transition into pro, were there any go-to recipes of beers like that you were most proud of, or the favorites from a home brewer that maybe you brought forward with you to the pro brewer?
Positively. I think that the process is definitely the thing that I brought the most, you know. We talk about it as brewers that like really we all can have the same ingredients and all make different beers because we all have different processes.
Yep.
And I really am a big proponent of doing the same thing every single time. And
that's actually, let me jump in here, because we just had a person ask almost a similar question. So John Sutton said, what's the most important thing, technique, process, ingredient, etc., that moved you from an established home brewer to a pro brewer? Kind of tails into that.
Sure. Yeah, man. Thanks, John. I know that name. I know that name.
Everybody knows John, man.
Okay, cool. I don't think I did read this question earlier. I kind of knew some of these questions prior. I don't think that I just kept doing the same thing every single time and learning. So as a home brewer, I continued to do, you know, continue to brew over and over, and moving to being a professional brewer, it was the same thing. You just got to do it over and over and over and over to really feel comfortable with your techniques. You know what I'm saying? And with the process, as soon as you get the process down. So I would say process is number one. Okay. I would say process is number one. And then, you know, after you get your process down, then you can change, like ingredients, in my opinion, is definitely the last thing. You have to make sure you have a solid process. That's your base of your structure that everything's going to be sitting on. Technique and process are kind of the same thing. I would think technique would be a little bit more finesse in how you're like making everything happen in actual time, and really thinking about your process. One of my favorite homebrew books was How to Brew. Not How to Brew, but Brewing Better Beer by Gordon Strong. Brewing Better Beer. He just explains, like, don't spend your time sanitizing the spoon that you're using or your kettle. Spend your time in smart places, making sure your yeast is happy and healthy, making sure that your fermentation is clean, making sure that your pH is right. If you're having those kind of issues, you know what I mean? Knowing exactly what's going to help you the best is going to help you in the long run. So I think that a lot of that education for me was able to come through those books. And I'm really happy, like, with the technique. A lot of that technique that I have is just stuff that I learned in a book.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then
I
was doing it every day that it became my natural process, because I read it and I was like, oh yeah, I got to do it this way.
Right on.
Is that,
yeah, that does. And, you know, a lot of times I see interviews like this and everybody everybody seems the go-to answer seems to be sanitation, cleanliness. But I think that's really needs to be a given base. Like if you're going to brew, you need to be clean. You're cooking food, and you need to protect your stuff. So it's interesting to get into that. To the repetitiveness, getting your process in place. For some of us that brew for like competitions and things, being able to replicate and do it over and over and over again is such an important part that I think drives us to make better, cleaner, more enjoyable beer. So, man, that's cool. So tell us about going pro. How did that transition happen? Nice, dropping down to moral support. So you're working in the store, and all of a sudden, Pawpaw comes to and says, "Dude."
There is a little interlude in this story. At the time, so I was really happy at Bell's, and I was interested in growing with a smaller business, being an integral part of the business. When I started working at Bell's, there were 40 employees, and when I left Bell's about 2010, there were 60 employees. So still very small. About a year later, there were about 150 or 200 employees. You know what I mean? So that's really when they shot up. And I had opportunities to go to the Bell's plant and brew 200 barrel batches of Oberon, which is cool. But I really wanted to have the feel of the hard work and the putting your time in and energy and all that stuff. So I had opened my heart, I guess you could say, up to other opportunities. And I had a few different opportunities then, one being Pawpaw Brewing Company, and one being something called Sunset Boulevard that never really came about in the same spot that One Well is now. But I left Bell's originally to be the head brewer at Sunset Boulevard, and I wasn't paid for like 4.5 months, and it was a really super, super rough time in my life. I had, just finished college. I had realized that I meant to be in the beer world. I had the security of Bell's and the community of people. I stepped out. I, got hurt tremendously, and it was a scary, scary time in my life for a lot of different reasons. But after that it had settled out, the owners of Pawpaw Brewing Company needed help in production to brew more beer and help with just everything, just growing a business. And so I was really super, super lucky to kind of be in the right place at the right time, where I was helping out at a bar right down the road from where Pawpaw Brewing Company originally started. And it was kind of just like, hey, the kid that wanted a job a little bit ago, I think, let's talk to him. So I was really blessed to have that opportunity, and still am tremendously thankful times a billion to Ben Fleckenstein and Ryan Sylvester for hiring me, years ago, and helped me get out of a situation and help me stay in the industry. I don't know, I'm not sure what would have really happened in my life, but my now wife, but we dated for 8 years prior before getting married. And it's a thing where I was only going to be in the beer industry. I was only going to be a brewer. There wasn't any other options. I was going to be a school teacher. And it was like, you either start your own place, which I wasn't going to do because I want to just be the best worker for someone and have a family as well. Mm-hmm. But it just happened that I was in the right place at the right time. I fell into a family at Pawpaw Brewing Company that I can't ever, I'll never forget, and I'll always be a part of. And it's also allowed me to continue to expand and grow. And that's just what life is about.
Right on.
With you brought up Sunset Boulevard. I know it's like a sore spot, but I have a question that you might have an answer for that I've always wondered. The sign, once they went out of business, it moved to this little shop that was over on the corner of Sprinkle and East Main, and it sat above there on this pole for like years. Do you know what that was all about? Okay.
An honest answer.
That said, hey, I'm going to jump in real quick. So I just saw this comment from Kaylee Losi.
Cool.
Just want to give a big shout out to Presidential Brewing. All you guys out there, you need a beer. They're still doing the takeout and the deliveries. Check their Facebook out. Thanks, Kaylee, for tuning in.
Hi, Kaylee. Very cool. How many people are watching this thing?
We've been
about 30.
Around 30, yeah.
No way! Hey, hi,
Yeah.
my first time ever doing this.
So,
Right.
so Trevor, I got
Mine
a question
too.
here. We were talking about gear a little while ago. Do you have anything like any piece of gear that may not have been like obvious or in the standard arsenal of a home brewer, or something that you relied on, or something that you enjoyed that helped helped improve your home brewing?
I'm totally joking here. Because I'd never had one of these, but a beer bong would be smart. You don't want it, you got to get rid of this, man. Pound it down. No, I never did that. The best thing though in college was all the friends that I had, and I still have a lot of friends, and I love them all. But man, I was brewing a fucking shit ton of beer, and I had neighbors. I would bring over, plates of 6 schooners to across the street with the kids that lived there, and they'd bring the glasses back, put them up, I'd clean them. I mean, I was like a fucking bar. It was just awesome. So that was the best thing, because I had someone that was able to drink all the beer. I hear that a lot as a home brewer. We brew so much beer, we want to brew another beer, but then we just end up with too much beer. And one of the guys, David Curtis, who's works at Bell's in the general store and manager now, and just a great dude. When I first had met him, he was saying, he's like, I'm making 3-gallon batches. He was the best brewer that I knew. You know what I mean? And so he was fermenting out like 2.5 whatever. He'd get a case, whatever. He had the tightest system ever. But he brewed all the time.
Yeah. It was a challenge for me. When I started, I had this group, this bowling group, the gang or whatever, the beer snobs is what we used to call them. And John Sutton was in that group, and I'd brew all this beer, and I'd go to bowling, and I'd take cases of beer for everybody and be like, here, I don't care if they liked it or not, but I was like, here's some IPA, here's some stout, this is all the shit that I brewed. And I was cycling through it. And then we quit bowling. Just life happened, and couldn't keep it up anymore. And all of a sudden this shit starts piling up in my basement. And I go downstairs and I've got, 30 cases of homebrew. It's like, man, I need to go visit my friends more. So I agree. Friends are a valuable tool to a home brewer, man. Somebody to help you drink all that beer. That's awesome.
Yeah. But to be real, I'm sure, or I'm not sure. I don't know who's watching this, but I would say that the first thing that was the best was a wort chiller. That was number one.
Yep.
You don't have a wort chiller, like just an immersion wort chiller, which always were. I never got anything more than that. I never used pumps. I always used gravity stuff. I mean, wort chiller into all grain brewing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Into like yeast starters, like a yeast stir plate. Yeast starters, stir plate will like blow your mind. Into like recapturing yeast and like using like, even if you just, I used to get a lot of good, like that. It was like clean fermentation with a simple beer. It's racked off easy, still, boom, dump another beer right on top. I was always brewing another batch right into it. Sometimes I'd do 2 fermentations in the same bucket. But man, I gotta say, that yeast was happy and healthy and would blow up and clean out, ferment quick. And, we all know, or if we don't know, a fast fermentation, a quick fermentation is the best fermentation, more or less for most beers. Sure. So you want to just get through it. Get through that yeast, and if it can sit longer and it's not doing its thing, it's not going to be like how we want it.
So you talked about blowing your mind there with the homebrew side. So what big revelations when you became a pro brewer? What were the big things that blew your mind from a home brewer? Like, man, I got to change to this. This is crazy.
I want to say something, but really nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing. It was so easy transition from being on a smaller system to a larger system. I did grow very, very small. So I brewed 5-gallon batches at home. Then I brewed 10 to 15 to 27.5-gallon batches at home. Then at Pawpaw, we started with 12.5-gallon batches with 1-barrel fermenters. So at work, I was fermenting 31 gallons. At home, I was fermenting 25 gallons. Okay, so it wasn't that much different. And then I moved up to a 6-barrel system. I know people want to think that it's really different. But it's not different. It's the same thing, just more of it. You know what I mean? And so having that base knowledge on being a home brewer really helped me continue to expand and be able to do more things all at the same time to make sure we're progressing whatever business it is.
Having the opportunity, I think all three of us have, to brew with you on a 3-barrel, on a 7-barrel, and then recently on a 15-barrel system, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It is kind of cool to see. It really is all the same steps. I mean, you're doing the same steps that we're doing. The automation is a little bit different. And some of the, I think one of the things I always noticed was, I'm always so worried about the volumes of my malt or my water or my hops, but on a larger scale, the volumes, like watching you mash in is just eyeballing a mash to see that it's, wet enough or it's too dry or whatever. That kind of surprised me. Like I thought it would continue to be a science, but I get it. On a larger scale, you have a lot more wiggle room as far as, your end results. And then there's just the time of doing it.
Yeah. And most of the times when we're brewing together on those systems, it is the first time we're brewing that batch.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
It's most important to say, okay, usually a batch with this amount of malt and this kind of malt, whether it be flake product that's going to absorb more liquid or whatnot, is going to be about this much liquid. So there was a flow meter on there, but doing it the first time, you definitely have to eyeball it and be right there so you can know that, hey, this is exactly what we want it to be like.
Yeah, no, it's cool to be able to stand next to you and see that, like, because I'm still so numbers driven. And to have you just kind of, know the feel of your equipment and see when it's, it's right. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There's all different types of brewers out there. I feel it's important to have us all kind of, learn about different things that we might not be, I started way more as a artistic brewer, you know what I'm saying? And moved into more of a scientific structured. I'm a very structured person now because of brewing makes me a structured planner. Yeah. I don't realize how much of a planner I am in life until I realize like that's what I do at work. That if I'm not everything has to be in a row because that's how brewing is. You know what I mean? And it makes me feel good. It makes me feel secure. It keeps me grounded when I think ahead on
like your drinking beer now too. Like, are you more analytical? Like when you're drinking beer, like, oh, like this has, this sort of flavor and that sort of flavor back, compared to when you first started getting into brewing and drinking craft beer and making your own and stuff.
I mean, not like the it ruined it. It ruined it.
It ruined it.
Every beer needs mosaic now.
We're really lucky to be in the craft beer scene and to the majority of time have the opportunity, if we search for it, to find fresh beer. What's up, Jake? To find fresh beer from a local brewery. So we're super lucky. People that don't know about beers that aren't right or stale, old, oxidized beers, good for them because they don't know.
We had a question come up that sort of relates to that.
Yeah, I think it works.
And so Travis asked a little bit earlier, more on the opposite end. Do you have any thoughts or considerations about breweries that tend to put unfermentables in their beers and push them on the market and just say, keep that cold, it might blow up?
I don't like that at all. I feel like that personally. I feel like it's not responsible as a brewer, in my opinion. And there's no possible way that it's gonna stay in a cold area. I've been in the industry for 16 years. I don't care what distributor shakes your hand and what they do for you, and they're telling you that it's going to be always stored cold. It's not. I don't feel it's safe. I feel like there's totally ways to protect our beers, to ferment them out and have awesome products on the shelf that'll stay stable for a super long time. And I'm happy to be a part of a business that has strong morals with that. So we feel strongly about our beers. We do use a lot of weird products and a lot of weird stuff, but I will not send out something that's unsafe.
Right on.
I work in the food industry. What I make is going into everyone's body, and I'm super, super real about keeping it tight and clean and safe for everyone.
Good deal.
Does that answer your question?
I think it did.
So.
Cheers.
Cheers. So
Thanks
this may be kind of silly, man. No, thanks for being here. But how is being a professional brewer, and I probably know the answer, but now you're a professional brewer, how has that changed brewing and home brewing for you? Just tell me the truth.
No, for sure. I really thought as a home brewer that I would positively be the person that would always homebrew. And I have built my life to brew, and I finally have enough people to drink the beer that I make. No, I mean, everyone's life is different. My wife and I got started on our family a little bit later. So I feel like I had a good amount of time later in college, to learn my craft, to really push hard in the industry that I wanted to be in super bad. And I'm happy that I'm to the point now where I'm able to, I've learned a lot more than just brewing, I'll be honest, man, like brewing it's what I love the most, but like warehousing and like management of people. And I don't mean management, I mean leadership. I mean, managing is telling someone what to do. Leadership is promote, bringing them good energy so that they can see what has to happen and just get it done. And that's the hard thing, in my opinion, but it's also the most gratifying things that happen in the brew house. When you see everything line up together and we nail all the dates and times that the logistics of everything that happens, it's not easy, but it's super exciting. And just like brewing a batch of beer is, every single time I'm able to get in there and dough in, you know what I mean? So there's a lot more things to than just brewing to being in the industry and being a professional brewer.
Nice. So
can I bring something back?
Yeah.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity. So you asked me the homebrew beers that were exciting for me.
Yeah.
The number one was, I always call it my boner beer, but I created a cool ship at my wife's my wife's grandparents' house in their barn, in their red barn.
Can you explain what a cool ship is, maybe, for people that might not know?
Do that.
As a vessel, kind of like a big pool. So it held 5 gallons of liquid. It was a plastic. That was the cool ship was actually just like a plastic tub that you would use for a underneath like a washer dryer unit, big plastic thing, so you could cool off liquid quickly. So you brew your beer, you make your wort, and you allow the wild yeasts to come in and land on top of the cool wort in this location. So I did it in the red barn, siphoned it off into a barrel, and I grew with this beer. I brewed this beer called Red Barn Sour, which was originally created in the Red Barn to an awesome thing. And my favorite homebrew, it had wild yeast from the area. I was super into Flanders Reds, and that's kind of the style that it's based off. And I was able to grow it from 5-gallon batches to 155-gallon cask at Pawpaw, and then was able to collect that yeast and move it on to One Well, where I have about 8 or 10. So if you like sour beer, I'm just going to say, we've got some sour beer coming here within the next year and a half.
Awesome.
It's going to be awesome. A whole bunch of different varieties. We just packaged our Raspberry Ruby Rouge, which Ruby Rouge is the
nice
standard base with this wild yeast and microflora. It's an awesome beer, and I'm super happy to share it. Took 10 years for me to brew my first batch to actually get it in production in a bottle. So thanks to Chris O'Neill for believing in me and package, man.
So I remember walking into Pawpaw Brewing one day, and you went behind the bar and you pulled me a sample or something, or you went in the back, I don't know, and you were like, you got to try this sour, and it was Red Barn Sour, and it's still one of the more memorable beers of back in that Pawpaw day that I've tried.
I was gonna say, there was a while back at a big brew, Trevor, you when the Keepers of Craft, our homebrew club, was doing a big brew out at One Well, you took some of your homebrew stuff and you kind of donated it to a lot of people, and I ended up taking a keg, and
Yes,
I never knew what it was, but it had a duct tape along the side that said Red Barn on it. So it's really cool to hear that story. Yeah,
I got the spruce tip sour.
You're there. That was
yeah. I poured off some of that to drink before we don't. It was still good. I should have bottled some off. I feel bad not doing it now. Still totally drinkable. Yeah, that was a great beer.
I mean,
never had anything like it.
Yes.
So I didn't take kegs from you, Trevor. I took carboys. Remember, I came over and picked up a bunch of carboys.
Yeah.
And I've given them out to the homebrew community. I think I've given them out to like 4 or 5 different people.
I still have stuff. I don't. Here's the thing. On the question back to you still homebrewing.
Mm-hmm.
I will homebrew.
Oh, really?
And now I'm the last house that I was at that we rented was not capable of doing that. I see myself doing that, but I just have a lot less equipment now.
Nice.
You know, I have one awesome, super, super clean corny that I would make it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't drink like I used to. You know what I mean? Like in college, I really we could kill them, and I have a beer or two a night. You know what I mean? Maybe not every night, just because that's how it goes. And there are other nights where I can get down, but
I mean, ultimately, it is a poison, right? I mean, it's good, it's wonderful, it has great flavor and things, and there's lots of enjoyment we can bring from it. But you got to be careful, right? Everything in moderation.
Yep. You're welcome, Drew. Glad you got a keg.
Yeah.
Our boy distribution, Ron.
Yeah, I got Ron a carboy, one of your carboys.
Hell yeah.
So I have an important question. I can't put it up on screen. It came in via text from a good friend of mine. Ed Nash from Arclight Brewing wants to know what is your favorite Southwest Michigan brewery? Okay. All right.
So he's going to do this too.
Moving on. One Well. There you go, Ed. There's your answer. So, I don't know if this, I'm jumping back.
Hey, man, I'll be totally honest.
Yeah.
Ed makes some unbelievable beer, and I'm always happy, never been disappointed. And I love you. I'll see you soon, Ed.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I mean, soon when we can go get a beer,
Oh, man.
All right, so we've kind of covered this a few different times, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Trevor, why do you love what you do?
He's implying that you do. You do.
This is a funny question. I thought about this. You know, when you're like 7th grade and you take a test, it says like what you should do in it. And I thought about that a few days ago, and I'm like, you know what? I remember at the end of the test, it was like, you need to work with people and you need to work alone.
That's great.
I'm being totally honest. So I never thought about it like that, but I really am happy that I'm able to have some solace sometimes early in the morning brewing, being one, you know what I'm saying, with the beer and with the energy, whether I have music on or not. Usually I start my day with jazz or classical, but whether or I have nothing on and I just hear the hums of the motors and the fans blowing, and there's great energy right there. And so I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate when we can get back to it, the slammed bar, chatting with everybody and all the people and being able to be connected and chatting with my team, my teammates and the crew and, everybody that's into it. So my favorite thing about it is that I'm able to be myself. Here at One Well, I can just be myself, which is able to get some time just working my butt off, which makes me happy and sleep well. You know what I'm saying? Be at the end of the night, be happy with what I've done, and also be able to communicate with people that love the craft beer.
Right on. I kind of wish that I would have asked that last, but I still got more shit. I got more time.
As long as you tell me that it's the last question, I'll make.
No, man. Okay, you'll go back. You'll make it as good as that one.
I'll make it way better than that.
Amazing.
So what's your favorite beer down there at One Well that you're making right now?
So on the note of like, have you moved in craft beer and all that stuff? Like where, what changed you and all that? Like I've kind of been through a lot of spectrum. I know this ain't going to answer your question 100%.
No.
I apologize. I'll get back to you on that. But I personally didn't start drinking light lager. In life, I didn't drink any beer. And then I started drinking quality craft beer. And so I've kind of been through a lot of the double IPAs. You know what I'm trying? I really appreciate this dilemma.
There you go.
Yeah.
It was a great beer.
3D, it's 3D, man. 3D. But I rarely drink high gravity beers because I don't like getting tanked. So I tend to appreciate quality drinking beers a little bit more. My go-to beer and my favorite really is Moral Support. So I will say it is still my favorite. It depends on what mood you're in. You know what I mean? We've been canning our opener lately, which is just our blonde ale. And sometimes you just want a beer with not a lot of hops and not a dark chocolatey beer and not a sour. And I'm really happy that we decided to do that as a business, and it's going really well. People are drinking the hell out of it, and we're going to be canning some more. And it's not light. Like I don't drink a lot of domestic beer. I don't ever drink Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light. I just don't. But it's got some mouthfeel to it, and it's got some flavor, but it's still super, super duper clean, and it's not going to offend you. Doesn't matter what you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, and it's 5.5. So
what about like beer that you don't make? Like you ever cruising through the grocery store and not that you don't have unlimited access, but you're like, yeah, I'm going to grab this off the shelf.
Yeah, I do, man. That's a great question. Thank you. I positively believe that it's my responsibility to buy beer at the store and not just drink One Well beer. Sure. I think that's super, I don't believe in that. So I do buy beer. I only buy by date, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh man! All right.
Have a date on it. Don't buy. I'm just saying. I only buy by date, so I find myself buying. I find myself buying a lot of Founders beer. I'll drink Bell's beer because I understand the date. They change their date code so it says packaged. I'm super stickler, so usually it's like a month out. I'm like, a month and a half. I'm, maybe not buying it if it's simple beer. But I have lately, to answer your question, I've lately been finding like Mexican beers.
Oh yeah.
But freshish Mexican beers. So I really enjoyed some Dos Equis lager a little bit ago, and it was like a few months from being packaged. So I was just like, huh.
Yeah.
I live in Mattawan, so Paw Mattawan. There's a little bit larger. This was before the coronavirus thing, but I was super happy with that.
Are you into Modelo at all? I think we have a listener that's super into that.
Yeah, I used to do it more. I can tell it. What I like to see is like I always watch if you watch the news, you can learn what you should do. So now that it's getting popular, people are drinking it more. Yeah. So now you can wait a little bit, and then you can get some fresh Modelo.
Yeah.
Like years ago, Peroni, like say 5 years ago, like or like Stella, like stale. Then they started doing commercials 4 or 5 years ago. And now it's like, okay, people are drinking Stella. So you get a Stella and you're like, okay, that was packaged 3 months ago. 3 months for a lager. Usually they put those dates on 1 year out from packaging, overseas. So they'll say that it's good this date. You go 1 year prior to that. And when it was packaged. But so that's, I will check out some Modelo. Thank you for the suggestion.
I went on a quest not long ago to find
Kniss is at home.
Yeah. What's that at home?
Kniss.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
They can't get a nitro beer all the time.
That was my pre-show drink.
There you go.
So
always have
so but on the Mexican lager thing, I went on a quest a few months ago where it's like, I love Corona, I love Modelo, I love, they're so much better than I think the American macros.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went on this quest to find craft Mexican lagers, and 21st Amendment does one. I can't remember who the other one was, but it was hard to find. So, I mean, that's the thing, like craft lagers, I think we need more of them, more.
I'm 100% with you. I think that was kind of where things were going for this summer. Reading some different, beverage magazines and all of that, and just knowing where the craft beer scene's going. I think we're going that way, and I hope we continue to.
Yeah, right on. All right, I'm going to jump into some questions. So we got.
Sure.
Let me see, Tracy. She's a friend of mine. She likes IPAs, but she's a lightweight and she tends to get drunk easily. What do you suggest that has good taste and feel, but is still light in the alcohol content?
Tracy, I love that. I'm a lightweight. I mean, I drink a lot of beer, so that has a ton of flavor. Our moral support has a ton of flavor. And low ABV, 4.8. Very, very easy, very drinkable. I think you would enjoy that thoroughly.
Nice. And then I don't know if you remember, Trevor, a few years ago, I was in Pawpaw. This is a while back, and you gave me some of the Pawpaw Dark Chocolate Imperial Stout, and I loved it. And I bought a case of it. And my good friend Trent Rinke, I gave him a couple bottles, and he says he still has a couple. What do you think? Do you think it held up? 2015 Dark Chocolate Imperial Stout.
I don't
drinker.
We did it 2 years in a row, and the first year did not hold up.
No.
But the second year, I think definitely could have held up.
All right. I think this was the second year. I think it's good. It's good. I got a couple. I'm gonna go. What's that?
Is he drinking it right now?
Yeah, Trent, are you drinking it right now? We're on like a 30-second delay, so I'll give you an answer in a second.
I can't see anybody else on my screen anymore. What happened?
No, we're just changing around, playing with the cameras.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure I didn't screw anything up.
No.
I got a quick question for you, Trevor. Just out of curiosity, we may have covered this, but I guess to just cover again, were there any specific challenges in your homebrewing journey that you felt were challenging to overcome, and how'd you get over them? How'd you get over that hurdle?
Okay. That's a good question. I think that getting into lagers for me was really hard, mainly for the reason that I started getting into lagers in the early spring. So I was trying to do stuff in a very, very hot time of the year. Throughout the middle of the summer, I was trying to do my best lagers, and I didn't have quality equipment. I was trying to do some stuff in the basement of my college house, which was cool cellar temperature, but I was also at the same time kind of growing the spectrum on my batches and, growing the volume. So fermenting 5 gallons is going to produce a little bit of heat. Fermenting 25 gallons produces a bunch of heat. And so I wasn't able to ferment at those temperatures. So I had some stinky sulfur egg smelling 25-gallon batches in my college basement. Just to be honest, you know what I'm saying? I told my wife, which was then girlfriend, that it was all good. It was all good, but it was horrible. And I but and then same kind of thing, spring, and I bottled some. I was in a music class at Western, and I had an awesome instructor, Dr. Steele. Just want to cheers out to Dr. Steele. Taught me a lot about the Baroque music and all the medieval music and stuff like that. And so I made this special beer. It was my J.S. Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach beer.
I love J.S.
Bach. Yeah. Which was a great beer, but it was great beer in early spring. It's like a Doppelbock, it was like a Bock that was extra sweet. Should have been a Doppelbock, but I did get to give some to my professor, and he got to drink it before it exploded, because a few months later, as I had 20 or 30 cases in my basement of different beer, 5-gallon batch or 20-gallon batch. So between 5 and 15 cases, 20 cases of each, or excuse me, 2 to 6 cases of each. All of a sudden, sleeping in the middle of the night, pop! My girlfriend freaking out, like, what is, like, sound like gunshots. I'm like, oh shit, so next day, she goes home. I'm like downstairs. It's like the middle of the summer. So August, fucking hot as hell, in like a raincoat gear, put on gloves, goggles, and like snow pants. And I'm like walking this case up. It's like poof, going in my can. I'd toss it in the garbage outside, shut that shit for the next 3 days, man. You'd like poof,
Pop.
garbage. The Herbie Kirby,
Yep.
But all the neighbors respected that. They're like, Trevor had a homebrew batch that went bad. Whatever, he gives me enough. It's all good.
That's what I was telling Brian the other day. I had a batch of this root beer braggot that I was I was brewing. I've tried it a couple of times. I got the recipe from a club over on the east side, Craft Brewing. They used to publish it. When they brew it, it's amazing. I've never had good luck. But we were out doing yard work one day, and I reached into the fridge. So this beer was cold. And I go pop the top, and that top shot 6, 7 feet out in the driveway. And I'm like, oh shit, So I'm grabbing all these beers, and I go into my sink and I start popping them. And I actually have a video. I should put it on Facebook of just these beers just geysering up. Yeah. And they were cold. If those were warm, they would have all exploded.
Oh yeah, no, never mind. No, that never.
Was the saying though, like you're not truly a home brewer, right, until you've had to mop your ceiling?
Exactly.
I have at least had that. Yeah.
Yes.
My wife knows too much about that. I know I should marry her if she stuck through that a long time, man. No showers at Trevor's house.
Right.
You got 3 buckets fermenting in there, man.
Exactly, right?
Yep.
That's not a bathroom. That's a fermentation chamber.
Damn, man, behind that curtain, that's the Hefeweizen spot. All over the fermentation, baby. Like not bathtub gin, bathtub Hefeweizen.
Exactly. So, man, I'm running out of questions, but I know we got a few in the thing. But the last thing on my list was, do you have any dream collaborations that you'd like to do? I've talked to some friends in this industry, and they've talked about brewing with, Mikkeller or some of the other big ones. Is there any white whale out there that you'd love to get an opportunity to brew with?
That's
or local.
I probably do, and this is not a request or ask or anything like that. But I mean, just I'm only in the very early probably spectrum of hopefully first third of my craft beering experience, you know what I mean? Kind of 20 to 35, 40%, whatever. I would love to be able to do something with Bell's.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
In the long run, you know what I'm saying? John Mallett, I respect times a trillion, and everything that's happened, and Larry and everything. I just that would be the coolest, probably full circle thing that could ever happen. But I don't think about that. I don't think about what I could do. I think I'm past that point. No disrespect to having dreams. I love that. But I'm so in the moment with what's happening right now and what's been happening with One Well. We're super motivated as teammates. Everyone that's on the team there is just doing the right thing, and it feels great. Just to kind of do the right thing. And I'm not trying to do anything. We're not trying to be anybody that we're not. And I'm not trying to do. I'm not saying I'm not trying to do collaborations, but I'm trying to do the right thing. What's best for our community. You know what I mean? On that note, no, to be honest, I should have said ArcLight. Because that one a little bit ago. I
don't know if he's still watching.
No, come on, man, come on. But no, we had a collaboration fall through. But
I look at it, and I see a lot of the breweries I love in the area doing, collaborations and stuff like that. And I just think it's cool that, in this industry, in this community, that pro brewers can get together like that and work together and learn from each other and it's not necessarily a you against us or you against me kind of scenario, and I just think it's cool.
I do too.
Yep.
I'm on that.
Agreed.
Cheers for that.
Yeah, I
Cheers.
had a question that came in via text to me too.
Sure.
So the question was, do you need facial hair to brew good beer? Is that a requirement?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Do you need facial hair to brew good beer?
Oh.
This is
Facial hair. Ed Nash from ArcLight doesn't have facial hair.
He does not. He does not. Neither does Jake Losey from Presidential.
Sometimes.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
he does. Yeah.
He looked like he was like getting into it. So, but I'm gonna say, I'm gonna hit that one on Ed, man. Ed doesn't have facial hair. He makes great beer. He makes great beer.
All right, we got another question, and this one's closer to my heart from Mr. Drew Doster here. We did a few off flavor trainings through Keepers of Craft. Trevor, do you have any particular off flavors that you're sensitive to? And I actually think this would be good for maybe Brian and Jason to answer as well, just so we
Sure.
all have it. So yeah, go for it.
I'll go first, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
That I'm super duper sensitive to diacetyl. And I'm pretty darn sensitive to oxidation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I had some experiences with diacetyl earlier in my career, and it's changed for the worse.
Really?
You know what I mean? Just like, just
You start tasting it everywhere, sort of, or
I feel like I'm sensitive, but
yeah,
everyone has different thresholds and all of that. But I drink my beer super cold. So that's one way that I've been able to mitigate that if it is in different things. But that's all. But I try not to, where I am in my position, I am lucky and not lucky. I'm thrilled to not have to think about off flavors that often, like almost ever here at One Well, and that's the best thing I can say. You know what I mean?
No, it's true. Yeah,
but I'm sensitive to diacetyl and oxidation.
I think oxidation is the one that gets me the most. Like, I question diacetyl all the time, and I wonder if I'm tasting it or if I'm thinking it. But oxidation, and tasting the beers, like so my role in the club is competition coordinator. I'm trying to convince everybody in Keepers of Craft to enter their beers, because I don't think you're going to get any better feedback than impartial judge feedback.
Sure.
And I get to try a lot of beers, and the one that I get the most, I think, all the time is oxidation.
Okay.
You
using those barrier caps, the oxygen barrier?
Yep. I think they're pretty standard now, but I think it's in the transfer of your beer. It's in purging your vessels. Purging your carboy, purging your vessels, as Brian recently taught me. Sealing your.
And I was talking to one of my guys, one of my cellarmen that's brewing, man, or just do it in less steps. Maybe just do a primary, crack it in there, move it into the so that you're not even messing it up. He was just like, Trev, man, I'm doing all this stuff, and I just feel like, maybe I'm just one less thing to keep perfectly clean or whatever. You know what I mean? Or perfectly less sanitized. And I can respect that.
When I first started, I secondaried everything.
Me too.
I just thought I had to.
Like tertiary, quadrupary.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And as I'm learning, as I've grown, as I think my beer's gotten better, I don't secondary hardly anything.
Right.
I mean,
agreed.
Some fruited beers maybe, but hell, there's even been times with like a raspberry stout where I just pitched the raspberries into primary, and
and or what I could suggest, just on that note, just because now you got me thinking, but or on that note, just transfer it on day 5 instead of 7 or whatever. So that there's actually, you're only through 70% of the fermentation, and
right.
that it's actually going to create a quick CO2 barrier.
Exactly.
I'll kind of do
right. Sorry,
so,
go ahead.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to give like a quick 1-2. So diacetyl, for those that aren't familiar, is it's like the flavor is more of it's like a buttered popcorn flavor. They actually use it in buttered popcorn like flavoring for like movie theaters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So in beer, when Trevor's talking about diacetyl, it's more of sort of a like a buttery sort of flavor. It's a precursor, right, to what, ethanol, Trevor, or something like that. I can't remember.
You're correct, man. Yeah. So what happens? Like the main thing that happens in the fermentation is that a lot of us know that the yeast eats the sugars, cool, and it creates alcohol. But there's actually something else that happens after that. Is that the yeast needs to reabsorb a lot of byproducts that are nasty. And that's a really super, super important part of the fermentation process. It's actually not the fermentation, but it's right after the fermentation that the yeast has to reabsorb a lot of these off flavors, such as diacetyl.
Cool.
See that tape?
And then Jason mentioned oxidation too, and that seems to be it has like more descriptors. Some people get like wet cardboard. Some people get like sherry flavors. Imagine kind of like sometimes people even get like tomatoey ketchup flavors, but it's imagine like chewing like on some like dry like sherry soaked paper or something like that, like those kind of flavors, right? Like people will get that in beers a lot, and when IPAs oxidize too, don't they? Like special things happen with hops and stuff, right? They get kind of brown sometimes, or they lose a lot of their aroma.
Yeah, you're totally correct. I get a lot of different flavors with a lot of different off flavors with different styles of beer with oxidation. So whether it be a light yellowish or nothing beer, oxidation tastes different in that than it does in a red amberish malty beer. It just tastes a little different than it does in a dark stout chocolatey beer. Oxidation tastes a little different than it does in an IPA. Oxidation tastes a little different, but all together they are all oxidation and they're all gross. And so once again, I'll just tell y'all, trying to show you the date code, but it didn't work on this one. Check your date codes.
And you guys, so when professional breweries can their stuff, you guys are taking do you guys take DO levels, dissolved oxygen levels and stuff?
Positively, man. If you're not checking good date codes and going to breweries that really believe in making sure that their DO levels are super low, you're getting stale oxidized beer as soon as you buy it, and that's fun for anybody. We definitely positively check our DO levels in tank, in primary tank, in secondary tank, if that's what that style beer calls for. We check our DO level just prior to canning, like I was saying, in those tanks, and we check it after canning in the can, and then shaken in the can, which kind of suggests what it would be like later.
Cool.
We have found different since we started canning 2.5 years ago almost. We have learned a lot, and so I'm happy to say that we've continued to get everything tighter and tighter, making sure that the same kind of thing as you were talking about, Jason Kniss there, maybe dry hopping a beer a day or two earlier to making sure that there's still a little bit of fermentation, so that when we open up the top cap and we're throwing in 45 or 66 or, you know what I'm trying to say, 85 pounds of hops, that no oxygen's getting in, that there's actually still some positive pressure going out. A lot of some things like that have really helped, but we positively look at that. And we're getting better, and we're doing a super great job right now. And I only believe that we'll stay at the level that we are and continue to get better.
Awesome.
And on that note, every beer is a little bit different.
Sure.
When you're adding something to a beer like coffee, and you're adding, even to the secondary, and they're still in fermentation, you're adding something that even if you just get it from the roaster and throw it right in, which we do at ASAP, it's still going to have some oxygen in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it's about eliminating it in multiple steps rather than trying to, completely.
We're so super sensitive. We're so conscious about the things that we're doing. The beer can stand for 6-9 months and be great. You know what I mean? Sure, I'd like it to be a year, but hey, can't always get what you want.
Right on.
Do you have some sensitivities, Jordan?
Oh yeah. I was gonna say I think Drew Doster also pointed out the same thing. He said, "Thanks for the answer." Somebody else shared it. But yeah, his sensitivities is acetaldehyde. That's pardon me, acetaldehyde. That's my superpower as well.
Yeah.
I remember when you first started brewing, you brought me down to your basement and you took a sample out of your beer. I mean, this was all the time too. This is before I think you even knew maybe what this off flavor was. You're like, I taste apple. Like, do you taste apple? And I'm like, no, man. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like,
it's almost a fault for me because I taste it in commercial examples. I haven't in a long time, thankfully. But yeah, that's my. On the other side though, like I can't remember what compound does like nail polish, but that's something that I am not susceptible to.
Ethyl acetate, I believe.
Yeah, Brian, I think you said you had a beer that had something like that in a while ago, and I tasted. I was like, I don't taste anything.
I don't remember a beer from Brian like that, but a mustard.
Yeah.
No, there was a keepers meeting during the summer, where and Ryan Walsh says case for Kvike, but so I used Juggernaut, which is a yeast blend, a Kvike yeast blend from Maniacal Yeast Labs, and I underpitched it, and it didn't have enough nutrients, and I fermented that sucker at like 95 degrees Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing tasted like straight up orange juice nail polish. Like it was. I kept some for a while to bring to the meeting as like an off flavor, like example of like, this is what ethyl acetate tastes like, you guys. Like, I've never had it before, so here, share my.
That's good. You learn from everything, right?
Yeah.
That's when I learned I don't really taste it. That's unless I'm currently drinking straight nail polish. That's
you have a lower threshold, and I've actually never tasted like green apple in any beer ever. I just don't think I have like a sensitivity to it, which, like Trevor mentioned earlier, is like a blessing sometimes because it helps you enjoy beer more, right? If you can't if you're not analyzing and tasting all the flavors and stuff.
Yeah, I'm throwing up a little bit in my mouth just hearing you guys talk. So,
all right, moving on. So the last comment made me think of this one. So Jeff Perginzer in the Keepers of Craft, he says, do you think a lot of craft beer lager trend is going to go towards the pseudo lagers, fermenting warm or using Oslo Vikes, for example, or traditional with longer lager times? What do you guys use? Have you done any lagers, and how are you lagering?
I am a traditional believer, and so yes, we have positively done lagers. I won't do anything less than like 2 months. Like 3 months is a standard like fermentation. You know what I'm saying? Lager time. I'll at least do 2 months, and more often than less often we'll be able to do 3 months. It all depends on tank space and stuff like that and your refrigeration. I believe that the small craft brewers will do it the right way, and the larger craft brewers will do it like, solid gold. And I'm not ripping on solid gold because I like to drink that, but I'll tell you right now, our opener is way more enjoyable for a super similar thing. And the majority of the time, I'm going to want just a little bit more flavor and just a hint more body than what I get from that. So
openers are blonde ale, right?
That's correct. Openers are blonde ale. So I do see lagers continuing to get more popular and stuff like that. I hope that people do it the right way.
Yeah.
But, we all have different belief systems.
I've had some great craft lagers. A 21st El Sully for a Mexican lager has been that's an amazing beer. Ed bringing up ArcLight. He's doing some good stuff with PBR, Pro Brewers Reserve, if he's still watching. An amazing craft lager. But I will say that Oslo Vike fad hit hard, a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, I think we got some real shit out of it. There were a lot of people like, hey, I think I can do a lager in a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and it just didn't. It wasn't good. I'm glad that one burned through quicker.
Well, so I will. I'm for Oslo. So for those that aren't familiar with Vike strains and stuff, Oslo is supposed to be a very fast fermenting, clean fermenting yeast strain that can ferment at high temps and stuff like that, way beyond normal ale temps. We're talking high 90s, and but it doesn't have that same lager taste that you get with some of the lagers, maybe just a hint of sulfur that is sometimes kind of appropriate or whatever. It's more of like what you'd get out of opener, maybe just super clean. And it's interesting, but it's definitely not the end all be all to I don't know, to quick lagers, I guess. I still think, like Trevor was saying, traditional is still, there's something about it.
Some things take time, right? And you need time. Patience. That's right. Now, that said, because I hope some of them are watching, but we have a kind of like a sister club on the other side of the state called the Livingston Social Brew Club. Great fucking group of guys.
Livingston.
Cheers to Livingston.
Cheers, Livingston.
Last year at Homebrew Fest, they did a beer where they brewed it. They mashed in and they fucking pitched at Homebrew Fest, fermented. I don't think they may have crashed it. If somebody from Livingston's on, they can clarify. And then served it. So Homebrew Fest lasts 3 days. And they brewed a beer and had it on site and had it on tap.
I do that.
And it was awesome. It was cool. Yep. It was this is neat. This shit, here it is, third week of August is 100 degrees and this shit's, fucking chewing through the wort in this campground. That was neat. But all of these breweries that just dumped on this Vike strain and started putting out, Vike lagers, and it was, take your time.
If I want to do it personally, I mean, I'll do whatever. I'll do whatever. I'm just saying, if the owner wants to do a Vike strain, we'll do it. We're doing a lot of stuff, a lot of weird shit. We're doing everything. So who knows? We might do it. But in my opinion, if I'm going to do a quick fermenting lager, I'll do a steam style ale. I'll do a steam beer. I'll do the best fucking steam ale that you've seen out in the east side of West Mississippi. I'm just I'm trying to be cocky.
Outside of Anchor, right? I get you.
I'm just saying, I respect that. I love the San Francisco lager yeast. You know what I mean? And I know what that can do, and we can ferment that up to 62, 64 and really get that through in a month and make that kill it. But doing something in 2 weeks, I think that's greedy. I have it's a personal thing where, patience, man.
Art takes patience.
Patience. Patience.
All right. Anybody else got any more questions in chat? I know you guys have been active and I appreciate it. For the first time, this is our first time doing this shit. We've got a great community that's supporting us, and Trevor, I can't thank you enough for coming on. So that said, unless anybody's got any questions, go get some moral dilemma. Hit up Trevor. Drink some One Well beer. One Well's killing it in Kalamazoo, even in the COVID days. You guys are nailing it. I went through and I got the moral dilemma for the crew here, and the drive up and all that shit. You guys are doing it, nailing it.
Thank you very much. A lot of hard work, a lot of good people doing the right things. You know what I mean? Great leaders. Great leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again, everybody. Unless anybody's got anything else. Trevor, I love you, man.
Bless you all.
Yeah, thanks for
having me, man.
Thanks a lot. Awesome.
All right, have a great night, guys.